you got a lot of people turning up in the comment section of my post-fight videos for AJ Ngannou, telling me not to make excuses for Tyson Fury, because I keep saying that Tyson Fury, in my view, didn't take Ngannou particularly seriously, and that is at least partly the reason for why he struggled so badly against Francis Ngannou. Now, these people I've kind of addressed to some extent in the fanboy roast video I did, the short version on YouTube and the full uncut version on Patreon, but I want to expand a little bit more on this point in particular. So what you guys who are accusing me of making excuses for Tyson Fury are basically saying is that Tyson Fury has consistent form in all of his fights, that his form never dips up and down. I mean, this is a guy who we know hasn't lived a life over the years, who's ballooned up massively in weight, who's been drinking, overeating and taking substances outside the ring. And we know that he's erratic as a character. And yet you're saying that's not going to manifest in uneven performances, where sometimes he takes an opponent seriously and he's absolutely at the top of his game, and other times he doesn't take one so seriously, doesn't train so hard. You're saying that's not going on with Tyson Fury. I'll tell you that you are smoking the hard food, because even a consummate pro and an absolute pure athlete like Anthony Joshua has up and down performances. Anthony Joshua, I'm sure, doesn't even train as hard for every fight. I suspect he trained harder for the second Usyk fight than he did for the first fight. How about that? And also, the mindset is not always the same for every fight. And the mindset is very important, because you can put your body through all the training, but if you're expecting an easy fight, if you're expecting to be able to handle somebody and you haven't come mentally prepared for a tough battle, it's very difficult to switch your mindset during the fight itself. But with Anthony Joshua, when he performed, in my view, poorly against Jermaine Franklin and against Robert Helenius, what did I say? Did I say, oh, that's prime Joshua and he was never any good to begin with? No, I said, that's not the Anthony Joshua of old. The Anthony Joshua of old would have done a much better job against these guys. The current version of Joshua, speaking at the time when he fought Franklin and Helenius, isn't as confident as the Joshua of old. And so he's not putting on the kind of displays that the old version of himself would have done. So if I'm saying that about Anthony Joshua and you're not complaining, I'm talking to the AJ fans now. You're not complaining when I say this is an AJ transitioning with a new trainer, an AJ whose confidence is a little bit shaky. I'm giving AJ some grace, understandably, because he's coming off back-to-back defeats. He's still dealing with the ghosts of Ruiz. So it's understandable that you would say, yeah, the guy's not quite what he used to be. He's not in the same headspace as he used to be, and that is manifesting in his performance. You guys had no problem with that. But as soon as I say that Tyson Fury didn't train the way that he has trained for some previous fights for Francis Ngannou, you say, oh, you're making excuses for Fury. You lot are so absurd with your reasoning. It's laughable. I am consistent. I'm not here to just bag on, I'm going to use an American term here, to just bag on one fighter and never give them any credit. Or praise one fighter and never give them any criticism. No, 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 no. On this channel, no fighter is below praise and no fighter is above criticism. So sooner or later, I'm going to criticize and praise most fighters, whether I like their personality or not. That's just the way it goes. So you need to wrap your heads around the concept of objectivity. I'm not making excuses for Tyson Fury. I'm just acknowledging the reality that he's an erratic character. He's always been erratic. He's always been a guy that is lacking in discipline to some extent, yo-yoing up and down in weight throughout his career, drinking and eating bad and doing this, that, and the other. And yes, it's his fault, but as much as it's his fault, that is going to result in inconsistent form in the ring, isn't it? Anyone with 2 or more working brain cells in their head will come to the understanding that yes, when you're that inconsistent with regards to your discipline, that will manifest in your performances in the ring. And so it is with Tyson Fury. There were so many people saying, no. Fury was at his absolute peak when he fought Ngannou. He's just rubbish. He's always been rubbish. Again, people have these dichotomous ways of thinking. It's either one extreme or the other. There's no shades of grey with these people. But in reality, life is full of shades of grey. Tyson Fury, I've always said, is overrated to the extent that people who support him got carried away with how good he was. That doesn't mean he's rubbish. Yeah, overrated, in my way of using the term, doesn't mean that somebody's no good. It just means they're not quite as good as their supporters and the people who believe in them think they are. And so, yeah, Tyson Fury is overrated because people were saying he was the greatest heavyweight of all time after he beat Dillian White. He'd had, I think, 5 world title fights by that point, 3 against the same guy. How on earth, based upon that, could you possibly say that he's the greatest heavyweight of all time? That's what you call overrating somebody. So yeah, Fury is overrated to some extent, but he's still a very, very good heavyweight. And despite being somewhat overrated, he might still be the best heavyweight in the world. We don't know yet. We have to see how he gets on with Alexander Usyk, and then maybe after that, if he fights Anthony Joshua, then we'll find out if he's the best heavyweight in the world. But you don't give a guy those type of plaudits and call him the greatest of all time, better than Lennox Lewis, greatest of the era, until he's actually cleaned out the division for one, bare minimum. So again, stop this black and white thinking that somebody's either the real deal or they're rubbish. There's shades of gray, many shades of gray in between. And just because somebody is quote unquote overrated, it doesn't mean they're not any good at all. Anthony Joshua was overrated by some people, by many of his fans, when he was still undefeated. I mean, I remember going into the Klitschko fight, talking to a friend of mine who was a casual, and I was saying that I expect Anthony Joshua to have a lot of trouble against Klitschko. This is a really, really dangerous fight for him. And my casual friend was like, what are you talking about? AJ is going to destroy this guy. I can't see anybody living with AJ. This is what the guy was saying. He could not understand why I thought this was a really dangerous fight for Anthony Joshua. Obviously, if you are a veteran boxing fan, you would have known at the time exactly why that was a dangerous fight for Anthony Joshua. But these casuals, they don't understand boxing the way that we do. So after the fight, when I saw the same friend again, he looked shell-shocked. He's like, I can't believe. He was actually disappointed that AJ didn't deal with Vladimir Klitschko with ease. I mean, he had totally unrealistic expectations. But that was an example of, one of my friends who's a casual overrating Anthony Joshua at that time. And I'm certain there have been many other Anthony Joshua supporters over the years who overrated him to some extent. But overrating doesn't mean he's no good. It just means he's not quite as good as you think he is. Quite as good as the consensus thinks a particular fighter is. So that's what I'll say about that. Are you sick and tired of the mainstream mindset? Does the dogmatic conformity and pathological ignorance have you tearing your hair out in frustration? Then don't be alone. Come and join our brotherhood on Patreon. We stand as a beacon of reason against an army of insanity. You'll gain access to my weekly topical podcast where we take more deep dives than Jacques Cousteau on an endless variety of subjects. There's also videos, interviews, live Q&As, as well as a vast back catalogue of previous episodes, including my popular Confessions of a Nightclub Bouncer series. You can listen via the Patreon app or download in high-quality MP3. Connect with myself and hundreds of other members in our Element chat group. There's no contract, no commitment, you can cancel at any time, and it's cheaper than a Mickey D's McMuffin. Just head to my Patreon page via the link below this video and select the tier called the Brotherhood of Reason. I'll see you over there.